What's up, everybody? It's Gilly. I am doing another episode of Gilly and Friends, and today I brought my friends. Actually, I'm at my friends Dave and Lisa's house. I've known them for a few years now.
Yep.
And we met at the town pool floating around.
Yep.
So why don't you guys introduce yourselves?
Well, I'm Lisa, and you know me because I sing in the worship band and I do declaration sometimes. And we have been in Wickenburg since 2016, and we got here by caretaking a ranch. And so we did that for a while, and Dave and I have been married 44 years.
Dave, what did you do for work back in the day?
Back in the day, I was kind of like one of those guys they always talk about, master of all, yeah, whatever that term is, But no, a main job, I was a millwright, which is working on large equipment mainly it was in sawmills.
Okay.
And stuff like that in Alaska, Idaho, Washington,
all over.
All over. And then for another 10 years, I was a snowcat driver on a glacier in Alaska.
Whoa.
And I've been a fireman, captain on a fireman and fire department, a volunteer department, and EMT. And Lisa was my buddy up there because in the little town in Alaska, she was the main person at the clinic to have people come in and everything else. So we'd have an ambulance call in the night. She'd head down to unlock the clinic, and I'd head out on an ambulance call. So we've done lots of things together over the years, and done many, many things.
So what about you? What did you?
I worked in clinics, a lot of rural clinics in the medical office. And then when we moved to Washington, I became a financial counselor for a hospital. So I got to help people figure out paying their bills in the hospital, give them financial assistance, help them sign up for access, all that kind of stuff. So I got to do a lot of different things, and I loved it. It was right up my wheelhouse.
A lot of customer service.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
You didn't tell him about your light bulbs.
Oh, yeah. I was the largest purchaser of light bulbs in the United States in the 80s for a sign company.
It's probably written there somewhere.
It's somewhere
in the record books.
Somewhere in my bio, largest light bulb purchaser for those electronic signs, those time and temperature and scoreboards.
Yeah.
Everything the company that I worked for manufactured all those.
Oh, wow.
So that was in the 80s. So I was just a young pup then.
Yeah.
Wow. So it was cool.
Very cool. So tell us a little bit about your family.
Well, we have 3 boys. The oldest, they're twins, and they're 42, and the youngest is 37. And the youngest lives here in Goodyear, and he has 5 children, all boys. And then, we don't get away from boys. And then our 2 other sons live in Washington State, and they have, there's our oldest grandchild, which is 20, and then we finally got a girl, so she is 17. Right. So we have one girl out of all these Kellys.
I bet she's well protected.
Yeah, she is.
Well,
she's big though. She's like 5'10".
5'10", and I'm tell you what, with her attitude of walking down the street, somebody smart off to her.
Don't mess with her.
Yeah.
She just clobber.
I mean, it's probably what happens when you're surrounded by boys.
But she's going to be here this summer for 3 weeks. So
awesome.
we're going to take her to Mexico, and it should be fun. Yeah.
Very cool. Can't wait to meet her.
Yeah.
So you're on the worship team. How long have you been singing on the worship team?
Probably about 2 years, I think, maybe 2 years. Yeah. And I was just, I'd sit in the congregation and I would sing the songs and stuff, and worship songs just fill my spirit. And so they just emit out of me. And so I thought, well, you know what? I should be up there just showing everybody, and stuff. And I just love the worship team. I love to sing. I don't have a wonderful voice, but you know what? I got lots of spirit, so that's good. So I love it. It just fills my soul. Yeah.
What about you, Dave? You're involved with men's ministry
and greeter.
Yeah. I was, in case you guys don't know much, you know that I'm kind of blind, literally. And I was trying to think of something I could do down at the church to volunteer because, you know, it's hard for a blind person to do a lot. But she started going to singing early, and so I hit Karen up and said, "Is there any chance you think I could greet?" And she says, "Yeah." So I started greetings, and something I enjoy. I enjoy people. I kind of an
It's his calling.
Yeah. Oh, you're great at it.
an
I watch you in the
extrovert,
sound
and
booth.
I just enjoy meeting people and greeting them, and coming in, going out the door, in the door. I don't care. And sometimes I'll greet you 3 or 4 times and I don't recognize you, you know, until you say, "Dave, you've already done this twice." "Oh, I'm sorry. Well, here, hello again."
Hello.
And his health hasn't been very good in the last 6 months or so, but I'll tell you what, he goes to greeting and it fills him up so much. He comes back with a whole different mindset and everything because he's had that communication.
And your presence, it's felt both when you're there and then when you're not there.
Right.
We love
Well,
that.
and I have to go back and use my chair. I had to buy myself a own chair to sit there.
Yeah.
Because those metal ones,
Awful.
they're terrible chairs. And I bought that one, set it there, and I noticed that it hasn't been put away. It just sits there, and everyone wants to sit on it.
Yeah. So what's maybe a favorite childhood memory?
Back when we had a small little ranch, and going out and chasing the cow every night, and we had a great big huge tree fort that we'd have pine cone fights out of, and some guys would be on the ground, some guys up there. One of my brothers, I had older brothers, so there was a lot of evil things they did to me, which brothers just do.
Yeah.
So I always remember those, and I always try to get even with them more, even to this day. But no, that was our greatest time when we lived up the Gulch. So
any big words of advice that you remember from when you were growing up? Words of wisdom.
You might not have gotten wisdom till you got older.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a few things that got said during the years that I wouldn't want to say.
We're not going to mention those ones.
Yeah.
As good.
Some jokes and some things.
Yeah. So my parents were just pretty good parents. I mean, they ended up getting divorced later on, and I have to say that they were both alcoholics, but they both quit and ended up going, before they passed, going 25, 30 years without
awesome
a drink. So that was
amazing.
Pretty good. They came back. They're good when we were younger. That middle time was rough, and then the later time was great. So yeah, a lot of good memories of them.
That's good. What about you, Miss Lisa?
You have to wait to my sermon on Mother's Day.
Oh, that's right.
Gives gives you some real insight to my childhood.
Well, this is good because it leads into our my next question is that you were going to be preaching on Mother's Day, and how did that come about?
Well, I actually was at the women's ministry meeting, setting up our luncheon for next, the end of the month, and I said, well, I see my name on the list for being a speaker because I've spoke at them, a few times. And so I said, I see my name on the list for July to be a speaker. And Tara said to me, well, actually, we were thinking about maybe Mother's Day. And I said, oh, we're doing a luncheon for Mother's Day. And she said, no, actually preaching. You want me to preach? And she said, yeah, for 2 services.
Yeah.
What? And she said, go home and pray about it. Yeah. And so God's been putting a message on my heart, and I was going to share it at the women's ministry, but now I'm going to share it with the whole church. Yeah. So
that's awesome. So how long about your faith? How long have you been a believer? Like, did you start off as a kid, or did you grow into it?
Yeah. I started out as a kid and going to church and Sunday school and that kind of stuff. Never, I believed in God, but never, it was just kind of a background thing and stuff. And then we started going to a church called His Place in Washington, and it was a lot like the place.
Yeah.
A lot of people, it was just there was no guilt, which was really nice. Had good music, had a good kids program and everything like that, and got baptized. Dave got baptized, and we just loved it. And so it brought our faith more forefront, where we were actually at a time in our life where we really needed that. And so that was kind of our walk. It was always in the background. Dave was raised in the Mormon church, and I was raised in just a Baptist church.
Yeah.
And so, we really didn't have much background, but some, enough to make you hungry for it.
Yeah.
And so when you did get around a church that had a great church family, and lots of support and just like-minded people, it really made it come up alive for us.
What about you, Dave?
Well, I would say that our walk with God and Jesus has really picked up the last 25 years.
Yeah.
And that's before then we were, like she said, we were absent-minded. We were twice a year churchgoers.
Yeah.
You know what that
Christmas, Easter.
Yeah.
Christmas, Easter. Yeah.
Christmas.
Yeah. We were, honestly. And then we started going to that church down there. But I was, like Lisa said, I was brought up Mormon. And I'm not going to go on any subject other than I just didn't feel right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for many, many years, I just tolerated it. I didn't go, but people would look me up and stuff like they do. And then one time a friend of ours was, she gave me this little booklet, and I read it, and I went back to the church down there, and I said, I'd like to get rebaptized, because I was baptized when I was like 8
As a Mormon.
in the Mormon way. And after doing some reading and stuff, I decided that really wasn't what I wanted. So we went back, and my boys got baptized, Lisa got baptized, and I got rebaptized, and our things have been much better since.
Very cool. Very cool. A little bit about your marriage. How long have you guys been married?
44 years.
44 years.
Mm-hmm.
And
go ahead.
And you mentioned that you met her. She was helping out in Alaska. Is that how you guys officially met, or
No.
what is the story? What's the story of how you
We
guys?
actually went to high school together.
Whoa!
But I was a year older, and so you didn't mess around with younger people, and stuff. And so, but my brother was in his grade or the grade below him, and so, I knew he played football, and he looked really good on the football team, and really good. And so 6 years later, after high school, I was in a nightclub one night, and my brother was there. So I was talking to him, and Dave just happened to be there. And how we met was just kind of magical, because we
you have to understand there's a basis behind it. I was in Cub Scouts with her brother.
Yeah. Okay.
And so we were good friends through high school and everything else. And I saw him.
Yeah.
I didn't notice her. I walked over.
You're like, friend, what's up?
Yeah. And I walked over and said hello to Mike, and we're talking a second. He introduces me. He says, "Oh, do you remember my sister Lisa?" And I go, "Oh yeah." And yeah, so.
And I was kind of a hippie chick, so I had a little moon engraved on my glasses. And so he goes, "You have a moon on your glasses." Yeah, really, duh. All I wanted to do was dance. Yeah. And so he had a friend with him, and his friend liked to dance. And so I danced with his friend, and all he wanted to do was talk. And I was like, I don't really want to talk. I want to dance. Yeah. And so, but finally he came around, and we danced and stuff, and he asked me for my number. And we the first date after we got to know each other, he said, he called me for a date, and he showed up in this old Dodge Dart car. I mean, the springs were coming out of the seat. It was January. Yeah. cold. Had
It
to
was a
push
snuggle
button.
car.
Yeah, it was a real snuggle car. And
did it on purpose.
and he said, "Well, I have a sports car. It's I have a wonderful Mustang Mach 1, but it's in the shop." And I thought, yeah, right. I didn't know him and stuff. I thought it was just a BS story, And so then he calls me for the second date, and he shows up in a red. These were all red. A red Ford Fiesta that he had rented.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, this isn't a sports car, this is a Fiesta, so we went, and we had great dates because he was very conscientious. I was on Weight Watchers at the time. He took me someplace we could have, a salad for lunch and stuff. So the third date came around, and he pulls up, and he in this beautiful Mach 1 red, all decked out, just beautiful. And he goes, "This is my car." And I'm like, "Where'd you steal this one from?" And he says, no, this is my car. And I said, "Okay, sure." And so we went on another date and stuff. And then he just kind of went on a fishing trip, and he was gone for a while. And I thought, well, I guess that
one week.
Yeah. Well, it seemed like
week.
ages.
It felt like a month.
Yeah, it did.
I remember hearing this story. It's like, you never called her back?
Yeah. And so, but I knew after the first date, God was just telling me, because I had had a bunch of losers before. Yeah. He just said, "This is the one. This guy is crazy enough for you. Yeah. He's adventurous enough for you." And so we just started having great adventures. And a year later, we got married. Yeah. And 44 years later, we're still married. Yeah. And what's the key to it? You said the other day, you told me something, and it was really cool.
Oh, it's just someone, I've had different people ask me, and I said, well, one of the things I says is for both of you never to fall out of love at the same time. Yeah. I said, so as long as one of you feels really happy and glad with the other person, it's going to wear on the other person, and they'll be happy and glad. I said, so,
because there's sometimes in marriage that you don't like each other sometimes. I mean, it's not all roses and stuff. And so, but
well, you're a rose, but you got lots of thorns.
But we always talk about everything. Yeah. We don't leave anything unsaid between us and stuff. And I think that's the main goal, is just to talk, good, bad, otherwise solve your problems.
Get it out.
Yeah.
And it took me a while to learn, because at first I would do something or not know I did something. Yeah. And for 3 days, she was dead and quiet. Wouldn't talk to me, wouldn't say anything. And then on the third day, she'd cut loose and unload on me. So after about 10 years, let's say, I finally figured, I'm slow. I finally figured it out that if I see her quiet one day, the next day, I'm not going to wait to the third, because it's hard on me. The next day I would say, okay, I don't know what I did, but tell me, so let's talk about it and get it out in the open. And once we started doing that, that also really helped.
Yeah, it did. It helped me too, not to brood for 3 days. Because it just builds.
It's not good.
I know, and it's even worse when the one, that would be me, is very unaware and just like, she's real quiet. And then the other one just stewing over it, already having all of these arguments and everything and rebuttals. Yeah. Oh, I know. My wife is the same way.
Yeah.
Brittany tells me all the time, she's like, when we grow up, we're going to be just like Dave and Lisa. Yeah. And I was like, okay.
Well, let me tell you, Dave, let me tell you their new trick. Yeah.
So, going back to your faith, is there any particular story or verse that is kind of like a life verse, or something that has helped you the most or been most impactful?
I think that every sermon that Greg does, you can pick something out of that sermon that relates to you, that, you've been a Christian, your whole life. And he'll say, like the other day in a sermon, he said that God says, I see you. Yeah. And sometimes I think we don't feel like he sees us. It's like, why aren't you fixing this? Or what am I going through? And stuff.
You see all the stuff I'm doing down here?
Yeah. And so when he said that, it was like, it was just a revelation for me, because I thought, God sees me. Yeah. He knows what Dave's been going through. Yeah. and stuff. And he just keeps opening different doors for us to be able to work through that.
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me of that scene because I remember that sermon, and he showed a scene from The Chosen
Yeah.
when Jesus talks to Simon's wife, right?
Mm-hmm.
Simon Peter's wife, and he's like, he's basically saying, like, I know that I am doing this with him,
Mm-hmm.
but I want you to know that before I leave, I see you.
Yeah.
And I'll tend to your mother, and
Yeah.
and like for her to realize, oh, it's not just about him.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the important people, you know what I mean? Like I think a lot of times, I mean, myself, I'm always have like this inferiority complex,
Mhm.
and like so like more people are doing more important things or this or that, but then to like realize that like, yeah, like God sees me in the little things that I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I think that it's a good way to remind ourselves, because in those times God isn't always audible.
Right.
You know what I mean? He's always not going to come in, pound through the door, or tell you or show you right off the bat like these things. Sometimes, man, it's taken sometimes years for me to realize, oh, I totally see what he did right there. Oh man, that was crazy. Yeah. Okay, God.
It's kind of cool to look back on your life. If I look back on the different situations that we've been in and how it's been a God thing, and when you look back at it, you go, whoa, that was such a God thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, how he helped you make that decision or move down this road.
Yeah.
And the times that you go against that, which I'm real stubborn and kind of you can be controlling, or I have ADHD, you know, and so I'm like, but anyway, and so I have to learn to give that control to my spouse, and to honor how he feels, and to God, you know, so that we can make those decisions together. You know.
And we are pretty lucky in the fact that we have always talked about things and opened things up. And most of the time it's a discussion, and every once in a while the discussion will be going two different ways. And I have to say, in all honesty, she's really good about going at a sudden point. She goes, okay, I'm just going to turn it over to me, which I don't necessarily want, but you know, and I make the decision, and she's always been happy with it. Most of the time things are just pure, but sometimes you're both just going different ways. And, and
well, you know, when you get married, the whole love, honor, and obey, which I did not want that in my service, because I wasn't going to obey anybody. But the pastor who married us slipped it in. And so, but I never understood it, that it wasn't like obey, that he's my master, but your husband should be the not the ruler, but he should leader of your home, whether it's your and Dave does. He's very wise in the Bible, where I'm not, and so he gives me a lot of that wisdom that way. And so once I learned that obey didn't mean that I had to, you know, but it did mean that I needed to submit to him as the leader of our family.
Submit and trust. You know, because I mean that's what God is.
Yeah, it's more of a trust than a than the other word.
And I think that, I mean, that's what, I mean, if you look at it with our kids, like we want you to obey, not because I'm a ruler over you and you're not smart. I want you to obey because I want you to trust me, and in that trust, you see that like things will turn out and work out.
Yeah, that's really good.
And you were talking about what verse, and I actually have to say that I really don't have a verse that I never read the Bible. I mean, I studied it growing up as a kid in the Mormon church and stuff, but I never read it. But I always listened to everything that was taught to me. So I really enjoy my little men's group. Because I'll be going through there, and literally every couple sessions, the light bulb comes on, and I go, now I understand what there was meant there.
That iron sharpens iron.
Yeah.
You know, for me, there's there's somebody can ramble off a verse and I can't.
Yeah.
I don't have that memory or attention. But like for me, 1 Corinthians 13 with just love. Like love is patient, love is kind, like that whole thing.
Yeah.
And the way that Greg explained it to where like Gilly is patient,
Right.
Gilly is kind,
Yeah.
like where you put your name in
Put
the
your
place
name
of
in
the love.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean that really became my life verse because that is exactly how I want to portray. That's how Jesus is.
Yeah.
And if we're called to be Christ-like, then
Yeah.
I will do my very best to be every one of those things to whoever I'm around or whoever I'm with.
Yeah.
And for me, honestly, parables have always been easier for me to understand.
Because they're stories.
Yeah. I love stories.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
stories is always easier for me. And I love it because that's when, like I say, that Jesus is like, that's where he's given us the Bible for dummies.
Yeah.
He's like,
Yeah.
listen,
Yeah.
you guys are not getting it.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you a story that you all get it.
Yeah.
And I think the prodigal son is always a great one.
Yeah.
Because you just kind of like going from like, I mean, I know I didn't really start going to church until I was into my 20s, and after Zoe had already been born and then needed like heart surgery.
Yeah.
And I just knew that I needed more depth than my friends could offer.
Yeah.
But realizing like, oh man, my backstory is rough.
Yeah.
I don't even know how I got into the things that I did, and then growing up, but then realizing that God still loves me, and like we're never the ones. God never separates from us. It's always us that separates.
Yeah.
And then I love the way Greg explained it to me is that like the father the whole time, the dad's like every day out there looking for his son, hoping that his son's going to return.
Yeah.
And then he finally sees his son. He doesn't just wait there. He runs to his son.
Yeah.
And then he just throws on like the best clothes and the jewelry, and that's how God is for us, no matter when we separate or when we come back.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was that prodigal son, kind of like as younger, but then I've also been that older son, the older brother, who's annoyed that this kid has gone away very far, and all of a sudden comes back, and we're like, oh, we're just gonna open up the gates for him, huh? Okay.
Yeah.
But parables have always been something that.
But it's nice to know that if you do screw up or you do make a mistake and veer off for a while, that he's totally welcoming when you come back.
Yeah.
And I think it even makes your relationship and your journey, if you learn from that.
Yeah.
And it's a teachable thing for when you get, when you get that feeling,
Yeah, a lot of times those times when we kind of separate or we're kind of going through that muck and mire, that's our testimony,
right?
And always just, there's tons of times. Even now, just being a youth pastor, that I'm like, fine, I'm going to do it anyway because that's what you want me to do.
Yeah.
I'm going to complain about it.
Yeah.
But I know like it's complaining, just venting. But Brittany was telling me. She's like, sometimes you're like Moses because Moses complained a lot. Like he didn't want to go talk to the people, so God he's like, I stutter, and God's like, well then you go with your brother. When he hits the rock and the water comes out, it's because the Jewish people were complaining, and he was probably mad. You know what I mean? Like, why are you stuck with these people? And holding your arms up, and you're like, my arms got tired. He started to complain, but he's gonna do it because. It's and I think a lot of times it kind of goes back to that inferiority complex.
It is.
It's like you chose the wrong person, and that's what I feel like a lot of times too. Where I'm like, I can't memorize whole books and but and others can, and then I'm like, oh man, I am. But Greg is really good about refocusing me.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, look at the things that you are doing. You are living out the words of Jesus, and you are good enough. The way you are right now, you will grow, but where you are is exactly where God wants you to be, and He is using you for His exact purpose.
Yeah.
And it's hard to hear sometimes because now you have to accept, like, oh, God has given me, He's really given me an honor and a privilege, and then you're like, I'm sorry for complaining, God.
And you feel like Moses, you go, I'm sorry.
I'll do it. I'm sorry.
Well, one of the nice things about our church is that you feel that freedom you don't have to be, there's a lot I have a good friend, and she could quote you every story in the
Yeah.
Bible. And when I need that, she's my go-to
Yeah.
person or when I'm having a problem, she'll find it in the Bible and explain it to me.
Yeah.
If I go in there, I'm lost.
Yeah.
I've tried, and stuff, but just knowing in our church that no matter what your gift is,
Yeah.
there's a place for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's Jesus Revolution. I love that movie, and I love that they, when they first started bringing in like the hippies,
Yeah.
like the whole,
I was there.
yeah. When they first started bringing in the hippies, they're like, we just got new shag carpeting. We can't bring these people in here.
Yeah.
Their feet are dirty, but like, but the pastor really hearing from God and having that moment with what's his name, Frisbee or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and learning like, oh, he actually knows, he knows what he's talking about, and saying when he said, and your doors are not open to us, like you can't impact lives with closed doors,
Right. Exactly.
and one of the things I love about the place so much is that it's so welcoming to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And people, when we say it's like a family, it is.
Mm-hmm.
And people love it. They're all the time. It's one of the biggest things that is mentioned is that the church feels like a family.
Mm-hmm.
And every Sunday, it's not I have to go to church. It's I get to go to church.
Right.
I get to go see my
Right.
friends.
Yeah.
I get to go say hi.
Yeah.
I get to laugh with some of my friends,
Yeah.
talk about how their week was going.
Yeah.
And I love that because that says that the church is alive, living, and active.
Yeah. I really liked last week. I wasn't singing, and so I sat next to. Oh no, I was singing, and
No,
I can't remember if I wasn't
You
singing. No,
weren't singing.
I was singing by myself.
I was
And
singing. I sing all the time.
I was sitting in the thing. Anyway, I sat next to an elderly lady,
Yeah.
and she was probably in her 80s somewhere, and she was singing them songs,
Yeah.
just like, and laughing and just gulping in every moment of church.
Yeah.
And I thought, how cool is it that we
Yeah.
can have older people, middle-aged people, young people, and kids
Yeah.
that all feel they're getting something from that service.
Yeah.
It's reaching each person.
Yeah, it's crossing multiple platforms.
Right.
And I love it. And that's, Greg really has a good gift at making things hit all the generations.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean there was a story that Greg shared with me about someone who talking about forgiveness and like holding on to resentment. There was something that Greg said in one of the last sermons Sunday, and this person who is well in their years ended up calling someone that they've had a grudge with for 30 years or emailing them for 30 years and just said that apologize for having that grudge, but like basically they messaged Greg and they told him it was because of you and kind of having that challenge that I was able to like let this go. I've had it for 30 years.
Yeah.
And he told me, I was like, 30 years?
Yeah.
Man, that's a grudge,
Mm-hmm.
And that's, but it's more than a grudge. That's a weight. That's a weight that you have been carrying for that long.
And it gets heavier.
It gets heavier. It does. Because every time you think about it, now you're throwing another rock in that backpack,
Right. Yeah.
And Craig has a really good gift at making things. You don't need to be super versed in the Bible to come to church and get a message from him and walk out. And I used to love it. We used to have a sign above the door that said, "You are now entering the mission field," for when you were leaving. When you were leaving church, because wherever you go is the mission field.
Yeah.
And so with Greg giving us things that we can take out to our lives, like that's where he's equipping us.
Yeah.
Essentially God is equipping us to live out in the world, and in the mission field.
Yeah.
So going to Wickenburg, how long have you guys been living in Wickenburg?
7 years.
Yeah.
And the ranch caretaking job brought you here?
Yeah, we were taking care of a ranch for the guy I worked for in Alaska when I lost my sight.
In Prescott.
In Prescott.
Okay.
And then he decided to sell the place, and he thought, it's going to take forever to sell this place. First guy bought it.
Yeah.
So then, and Lisa she had left the job at the hospital and found another job, and it wasn't going well. And so we used to go to this thing called workingcouples.com, not to put a plug in for it. But
And this is a total God moment.
Yeah.
And she comes home to tell me that, Dave, this job is just, it's too much paperwork. It's not what I want to do,
Yeah.
and everything else. And I said, well, I was just looking at workingcouples.com, and there's a job for a ranch caretaker down in Wickenburg. She goes, really? I says, yeah, and it's a paid position. Paid? So we called these people up. They came up. We called them on a Friday. Sunday they came up. We had a meal together up there. On Monday we called them up and said we would like to take the job. Tuesday we went down to see the place, and the people who were leaving, who were quitting, had only given them 2 weeks notice. So they're in the middle of leaving.
Yeah.
And we don't know what we're, but so we can move in. We have no idea what we're doing.
Yeah.
We don't know desert plants. We don't know
Snakes.
We don't know Gila monsters.
Yeah.
We're used to grizzly bears, moose, caribou, things like that in Alaska, and things here were
Talk about going from one extreme to the next.
a little different.
Oh,
Yeah.
The first 6 months, I was like, I'm out of here.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
It
there's
is too
many-
hot.
It's too hot. It was.
Tarantula on the wall.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
tarantulas on the wall, rattlesnakes. And I thought, no, I can't do this. I'm a city girl. I cannot do this.
Yeah.
But then it started like a new adventure. You know, I have to learn about all these animals and snakes and plants because we were landscaping for the property, and horses. And it was like flowers. Everything was different than
Well,
Washington State.
2,700 acres is the size of the
Yeah.
ranch.
Oh, wow.
And we were responsible for the main house.
Yeah.
And taking care of all that property, which was in another county.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah.
We're,
All right. Yeah.
Yavapai County. And so we're over there, and it's like 160 acres, and it's on underground watering. And so we're always going out, taking care of plants. I'm trying to fix water line leaks and pumps going out.
And the people that we worked for, they were just wonderful. They didn't have a problem with Dave being blind.
Yeah.
They said the last guy we had didn't have an arm. So they were cool with that and stuff. So they encouraged him when he went to blind school. They allowed him to go 3 days a week and go to blind school. And so we did it, and we ended up loving it. They're wonderful people. It was more estate management. Security, a lot of security, and stuff like that, because they traveled quite a bit. And but it finally got in 2021, we decided it was probably time for us to retire. Dave's side had gotten a little worse,
And I started to get shaken. And I did before that. I'd still work on electrical. Well, you don't want me taking a screwdriver into your panel that. Yeah.
We just decided, we're past 65. It was time to retire. So we bought this place over at West. We loved Wickenburg, and we loved our church.
Yeah.
And we were at the ranch probably 2 years before we started coming to the place.
Yeah.
We met you at the pool. We met Tara at the pool. She kept inviting us, and we thought, we don't want to get committed if we don't know we're going to stay. We didn't know we were going to stay or go, because caretaking usually is a 2-year gig.
Yeah.
And so we just fell in love with it. So we decided to go ahead and retire here. So
I was really excited when you guys started walking through those doors.
Yeah.
Because we had lots of great conversations.
We did.
Just at the pool. I mean, we hit it off right at the pool. Just floating around doing laps.
Doing laps,
Doing art easy laps.
Yeah.
So,
well, is there anything else that you guys would like to talk about?
No, I think we covered our whole life.
What was
our funny story.
Our funny story.
Dave has an affinity, or I don't know what you would call it.
I'm strange.
Yeah. And he's very much of a romantic.
Yeah.
And so when we were in Alaska, going to the grocery store was a date for us.
Yeah.
Because you don't get out alone very often, so that was a date for us. So we walked into the grocery store, and the grocery store there is about the size of 7-Eleven. I mean, it's pretty small.
It's called the food center.
Yeah.
And you knew everybody.
Yeah. And so we'd go in there and we were shopping and stuff like that. And all of a sudden they turned the lights down low.
On every other aisle.
On every other aisle. And we were like, wow, what's going on there? And they said, well, it's your date night. And so Dave loves the dog food aisle. For whatever reason, he gets very amorous in the dog food aisle. His hand's always up my shirt, in the back or whatever. And he loves to sing the Kibbles a Bit song. And so
here I see here the light in that aisle is off.
Yeah.
And I come around the corner and I see Lisa down there, and I started going down the aisle going, Kibbles a Bits. I'm gonna get me some Kibbles a Bits. And I'm going down the aisle, and I'm getting louder as I'm singing along, and all of a sudden Lisa looks up and goes, oh, Dave. And there's someone standing at the end of that aisle. And they're looking down, and they just walk.
They went,
no.
They go to
I'm going down that aisle.
That guy's being really weird.
Being fresh.
Yeah.
Like
In the dog food aisle. Every store we go to, the dog food aisle just does something to it. I don't know why, but
I'm a hound dog.
Anyway, that was our funny story.
Yeah, that's a great story.
Yeah,
That's a great story. Thank you, Lisa and Dave, for doing this interview with me. I loved being able to get to know you better. I hope people watching got to know you a little bit better too. But I only have one more thing to say. Peace! That's awesome.